Here's something to think about. Is the statement, "this statement is false," true or false? I'll let you think about that. Remind me in class, maybe we'll talk about it then. Okay, so the next part of our talk on vectors is what we call unit vectors, and I just wanted to define that for you guys. Unit vector is any vector of length 1. So we're going to talk about specific unit vectors. As you can see here, there are 2 special unit vectors that we deal with. In fact, we use these unit vectors to describe or to name or identify vectors, and they're called the I and the J. We use the letter I to describe the vector 1, 0. In other words, the vector I is the vector that's going directly to the right 1 unit. You can see it has 1 unit because you go to the right 1, you don't go up or down, so the length of the vector is 1. Okay, well then the vector j, and again we use that little half arrow there above the letters to represent a vector, and then we use the bracket notation to also represent a vector. So I want you to understand that these brackets these are not ordered pairs. They are components of a vector. We'll talk more about components down here. But 1, 0 means you go over to the right 1 and you go up or down 0, and so that's where the vector ends. So this 1, 0 represents the vector to the right 1 unit, and 0, 1 represents the vector up 1 unit. Okay? You can put it anywhere you want. I mean, you can put a j over here. You don't have to leave it at the origin, but vector j, that's also vector j right there. Okay? And also we can make a vector I over here. So we can put an I right there. That's vector I, because it goes to the right, directly to the right, 1 unit. Okay, so that's vector I and that's vector j. When you see them at the origin, it's a little bit easier to remember that's 0, 1 and 1, 0. Okay, well 3i, this should be not a big test for you guys, but 3i, just want to make sure you can do this. When students start learning about the unit vectors, they start sometimes getting a little bit confused, but I don't think that this is any big deal. They're just specific vectors, you know, just like when you learn how to graph. You learn y equals 3x, and then you learn how to graph x equals 1. So sometimes you have special cases of things. Alright, so anyway, 3i would be 3 times the vector 1, 0, and that would be the vector 3, 0. And make sure that you understand that when you multiply a scalar times a vector, you still get a vector. So in other words, you're increasing the length of vector I by a factor of 3. And when you increase the vector j by a factor of 2, you get the vector 2 times 0, 1, which is equal to 0, 2. You multiply the 2 by the 0, you get 0. 2 times 1 is 1. 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, and then 3i plus 2j would be 3 times, now after a while you're not going to have to do this, 3i plus 2j, 0, 1, and you get 3, 0 then, okay, plus 0, 2, and that's equal to 3 plus 0 is 3, and 0 plus 2 is 2. Okay, so that leads me to another form for writing a vector, or for expressing, I should say, a vector. Okay, so way back when we had this vector, let me leave that up there so you can still see it. So horizontal and vertical components of a vector. Okay, remember the vector u, our very first example. I drew a vector and it was over to the right 3 and up 5 from the initial point, or from the tail. You go over to the right 3 and up 5. Well, that 3 right there, I keep referring to these components. This is called the x component, or the horizontal component. So you want to make sure you understand what that means. A component of a vector, just like using Pythagorean theorem, if you drew a right triangle and you have 3 here and 5 here, well, you can see that the hypotenuse of the right triangle represents the vector, and the vector 3, 5, where you go from here to the tail to the tip, over 3 and up 5. Anyway, we can also make sure we understand this. This is called the 5, or the number in that position is called the vertical component. Okay, so that's also an important term. Okay, so vertical component there. And so what I want to do is I want to express the vector u in terms of the graphical representation of the vector, so we can see the actual vector. We could also express the vector in terms of the component form, 3, 5, and then we could also express the vector in terms of unit vector form. And the unit vector form, all you have to do is take the horizontal component and multiply it by the I, and add to that the vertical component multiplied by the letter J, or the vector, I should say, J. And that's another form. So we have 3 different forms for expressing a vector. And what I would like you to do is, I'm going to draw a vector, so we go down here and keep that there, maybe zoom out a little bit. And what I would like you to do is making sure, I'm going to just go ahead and draw a vector, and I'm going to make it go from here, and we're going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, and down 2. Okay, so let me draw it nice and straight. So you can see the grid here. I'm going to draw the vector, and I'm going to have you, this is going to be like your test here, I want you to express this vector in component form. And so component form is A comma B, and the unit vector form would be A multiplied by the unit vector I plus B times the unit vector J. Okay, so we're going to take this vector right here, and you're going to express it in component and unit vector form. Then we're going to take a component form, we're going to express it, I'm going to have you draw the graph of that vector, and we're going to go -2 comma 3. And then I'm going to also do one more here. So we're going to do -4 comma 1. Okay, and that's, oops, wrong form. -4i plus j. Okay, so -4i plus j. And I want you to express this vector as in the component form, and then also the graphical representation of that vector. So this is where I want you to pause the video and fill in the details, and it'll be the second of 3 videos. Okay, so pause video. Here we go. Component form would be over to the right 4 and down 2, so 4 comma -2, and that would mean 4i minus 2j. Okay, -2, 3 is -2i plus 3j. Well, no, let's go over here. -2, 3. So we can go, let's start -2, 3. So we'll start down here. And we'll go -2 and up 1, 2, 3. And I'll put the arrow there. Actually, I should have drawn it up like that because the arrow should be going up. Now, if you had the arrow going down here, that's not okay. -2, 3 goes up like that. Okay? And then -4i plus j would be -4 comma 1. That's a vector. So -4 will be to the left, so we're going to go from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and up 1. And so we end there, and we draw the vector just like that. So there you go, -4, 1. That's it for this video. And what was the last, I can't remember the riddle I said. I can't remember. Whatever.